If you've ever trusted someone who turned your worst moment into their favorite game, this story is for you. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 33 years old, born and raised in Ohio. People who meet me today think I'm calm under pressure. They say I never panic. They're wrong. I've just learned how to hide it. The first time my older brother realized he could control me, I was 8 years old. I remember every second because people don't forget the day they think they're going to die. I had severe asthma as a kid. My blue rescue inhaler went everywhere with me: school, church, birthday parties, even the grocery store. My doctor told my parents I should never be more than a few feet away from it. My brother, Dylan, thought that warning sounded funny. One hot July afternoon, we were playing hide and seek while our parents watched TV downstairs. I wasn't really playing. I was trying to breathe. The humidity hit me hard, and I could already feel my chest tightening. I reached into my backpack. My inhaler was gone. "Dylan," I yelled, my voice cracking. He walked into the hallway, spinning the inhaler around one finger like a set of car keys. "You looking for this?" I nodded, already struggling to breathe. Instead of handing it over, he grinned. "Come get it." At first I thought he was joking. Then he backed away. Every step I took made my breathing worse. I reached for him. He lifted the inhaler over his head. "Say please." I could barely talk. The only sound coming out of my mouth was a weak wheeze. Downstairs, I screamed for Mom. Nothing. I screamed for Dad. Nothing. The television was louder than my voice. My knees gave out halfway across the hallway. My vision blurred. I honestly thought, this is how I die. Finally, Dylan tossed the inhaler onto the carpet. It landed just inches beyond my fingertips. I crawled to it. My hands shook so badly I dropped it twice before getting the medicine into my lungs. By the time my parents came upstairs, I was lying against the wall crying. Mom frowned. "What happened now?" Before I could answer, Dylan shrugged. "She lost her inhaler again." Dad sighed. "Claire, you've got to be more responsible." I stared at both of them. Not one person asked why my brother was holding my medicine. Not one person asked why my face was turning purple. That was the day I learned something every child deserves never to learn. In our house, the truth belonged to whoever spoke first. Over the next few years, Dylan got smarter. He never repeated the exact same trick. Instead, he found new ways to make everything look like my fault. Sometimes my inhaler disappeared right before school. Sometimes my homework mysteriously vanished. Sometimes he'd whisper insults until I finally snapped, then smile while our parents punished me for overreacting. Whenever I tried explaining what really happened, Mom used the same sentence. "Claire, you're just too sensitive." Dad's favorite was even shorter. "Your brother didn't mean anything by it." Funny how people never mean anything when they're the ones causing the damage. By the time I turned 12, I'd stopped trying to convince anyone. Instead, I started writing. Every incident, every date, every lie, every witness. I hid a small spiral notebook inside an old board game box in the back of my closet. If Dylan stole one notebook, I'd start another. The pages weren't for revenge. They were for survival. Because when everyone around you keeps rewriting reality, you begin wondering if you're the crazy one. School became my escape. Teachers judged me by my work. Classmates didn't know my family's version of me. For the first time, I felt normal. Then 7th grade changed everything. Mrs. Parker, my English teacher, returned one of my essays after class. "You've got a real voice," she said. Nobody had ever told me that before. Not once. She encouraged me to join debate club. Standing in front of strangers terrified me. Speaking at home had taught me one lesson. Talking usually made things worse. Still, I joined. Something strange happened. In debate, evidence mattered. You couldn't just accuse someone because they were louder. You had to prove your point. I loved that. For the first time in my life, facts actually counted. When I won 2nd place at the regional tournament, I carried the trophy home like it was made of gold. Mom barely looked up from her phone. Dad asked if I could keep it in my room because company was coming over. That same weekend, Dylan scored 2 goals in a high school soccer game. His newspaper photo stayed on the refrigerator for almost a year. My trophy collected dust in a closet. I stopped expecting fairness after that. Life became simpler once I lowered my expectations. But Dylan wasn't satisfied. He didn't just want attention. He wanted control. And the older we got, the more dangerous that need became. When I turned 17, he smiled at me across the dinner table and said something so quiet that only I could hear it. "You still think anyone's ever gonna believe you?" I looked into his eyes and realized he wasn't talking about childhood anymore. He was making me a promise. I just didn't know how expensive that promise would become. I left home 3 months after graduation. I packed 2 suitcases, my asthma medication, a secondhand laptop, and every notebook I'd spent years filling with dates, conversations, and memories. I didn't leave a note. There wasn't much left to say. The farther I drove from Ohio, the easier it became to breathe. Not because my asthma disappeared, because I finally wasn't living with the person who kept making me feel like I had to fight for air. I settled in Denver, Colorado, where nobody knew my family. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, took online business classes at night, and slowly built a career in corporate compliance. People always asked why I chose that field. The answer was simple. I'd spent my entire childhood watching people lie with complete confidence. I wanted to understand how the truth could still win. For nearly 10 years, my life stayed quiet, exactly the way I wanted it. I blocked Dylan's number. I rarely spoke to my parents. Birthdays came and went without phone calls. Honestly, the silence felt peaceful. Then one Thursday afternoon, everything changed. I was finishing an audit report when my office phone rang. Claire Bennett? Speaking. My name is Rebecca Collins. I'm an attorney, and I believe your brother has mentioned you in sworn court documents. I froze. I think you've got the wrong person. I wish I did. She explained that Dylan now owned a fast-growing transportation company with contracts across several states. A former employee had filed a lawsuit after claiming Dylan ignored serious safety violations. Instead of settling the case, Dylan fought back hard. He sued the employee for defamation. According to Rebecca, Dylan painted himself as a compassionate leader who always protected vulnerable people. Then he used me as proof. She read one sentence from his affidavit. Growing up, I personally cared for my younger sister during countless asthma emergencies, which taught me the importance of protecting employees facing medical issues. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. He hadn't just lied. He had stolen my worst childhood memory and cast himself as the hero. Rebecca waited quietly. Finally, she asked, "Miss Bennett, is any of that true?" No, only one word, but I'd never been more certain of anything. She asked if I would meet her the following week. Before agreeing, I asked one question. Why me? Why now? Her answer stayed with me. Because lies eventually need witnesses. That weekend, I opened the storage container I'd ignored for years. The notebooks were still there, 7 of them. Their pages had yellowed with age. My handwriting changed from childish block letters to neat adult cursive. But the stories never changed. Every notebook told the same truth. Every page carried another reminder that I'd survived. One entry stopped me cold. Age 10. Dylan hid my inhaler behind the garage freezer today. Mom said I should stop blaming him for everything. Another, age 14. Dad told me family problems stay inside the family. Then one from my senior year. He smiled today and said nobody would ever believe me. I closed the notebook. For years I'd treated those journals like emotional baggage. Now, they looked like evidence. Monday morning, I met Rebecca. She didn't ask dramatic questions. She didn't pressure me. Instead, she slid Dylan's affidavit across the table. Can you identify every false statement? Line by line. I did. She took careful notes. Then she looked up. Claire, there's something else. The company claims an important security camera malfunctioned the day of the incident. I frowned. So, the camera covered the supervisor's office. Convenient. Very. She opened another folder. We've obtained computer login records. A username appeared on the page. My stomach tightened. The account belonged to my mother. Apparently, she'd accessed the company's video archive less than an hour after the employee collapsed. Rebecca wasn't accusing anyone. Not yet. But she believed someone had tried to erase evidence. That night, my phone buzzed. Dad! I ignored it. 5 minutes later, Mom called. Then Dylan. Then another unknown number. Finally, a text appeared. We need to talk before you make a mistake. I stared at the screen. For years, every conversation in our family had started exactly the same way. Not with an apology. Not with concern. With control. I typed one sentence. If you have something to say it through your attorney. I hit send. Dylan replied almost instantly. You're choosing strangers over your own family. No, I thought. I'm choosing the truth over the people who buried it. The next morning, Rebecca called again. Her voice sounded different. Excited. The cloud storage company found something. What? A backup. Is it complete? We don't know yet. But if the file survived? She paused. Double quotes ... IT could change everything. For the first time in years, I felt that old knot in my chest. Not fear. Anticipation. Because somewhere, locked inside a forgotten server, might be the proof that no one could explain away. And if that recording showed what Rebecca believed it showed, my brother wouldn't be arguing with me anymore. He'd be explaining himself to a judge. Courtrooms don't feel dramatic when you're actually sitting in one. They're quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes every cough sound like an explosion. I sat behind Rebecca's table, watching my brother laugh with his attorneys like he had already won. When Dylan finally looked at me, he smiled. It was the same smile he'd worn when we were kids. Confident, certain, untouchable. The judge entered, and the courtroom stood. After several procedural arguments, Rebecca rose. Your Honor, The defense has recovered previously deleted security footage through the cloud backup provider. The room went completely still. Dylan's attorney immediately objected. The authenticity of that file has not been established. Rebecca calmly handed several documents to the judge. The forensic report confirms the video has not been altered. The judge spent several minutes reading. Finally, he looked over his glasses. We'll view the footage. For the first time all morning, Dylan stopped smiling. The courtroom lights dimmed. A grainy office appeared on the screen. A young warehouse employee stumbled inside, coughing violently. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an inhaler. Before he could use it, Dylan walked into the frame. Without hesitation, he grabbed it. The employee reached toward him. Dylan stepped back. Even without hearing the audio, everyone could see the panic on the young man's face. Then the sound came through the courtroom speakers. Finish the job first. The employee shook his head, gasping for air. Dylan casually spun the inhaler in his hand. Come on, earn it. A wave of disbelief spread across the courtroom. The young man collapsed against a desk. Seconds later, a supervisor rushed in, shoved Dylan aside, grabbed the inhaler, and called 911. But the recording wasn't over. Several minutes later, after paramedics left with the employee, another person entered the office. My mother. She walked straight to the computer connected to the security system. What did the cameras catch? She asked. Everything, Dylan answered. She looked around the room before quietly saying, then this video can't exist. The recording showed her opening the archive, selecting the camera, pressing delete. The courtroom lights came back on. Nobody spoke, not even Dylan's attorney. The judge broke the silence. Mr. Bennett, would you like to explain what we've just watched? Dylan cleared his throat. It looks worse than it was. Rebecca stood. Permission to cross-examine. Granted. She approached a witness stand. Yesterday you testified that you had never withheld medication from anyone. Yes. The video shows otherwise. I panicked. You also testified your sister's childhood memories were fabricated. He didn't answer. Rebecca picked up one of my old notebooks. Would you read the first sentence on this page? He hesitated. The judge instructed him to answer. Dylan quietly read the words. He took my inhaler again. Rebecca placed the notebook down. This journal was written 24 years before today's hearing. She paused. So tell the court, how did your sister predict your behavior decades in advance? Dylan had no answer. His silence said more than any excuse ever could. The judge dismissed the jury for the afternoon while legal arguments continued. By evening, the outcome was obvious. The defamation lawsuit was dismissed. The court ordered Dylan to pay the former employee's legal costs. Evidence of intentional deletion was referred to prosecutors. A criminal investigation was opened. Outside the courthouse, television cameras crowded the sidewalk. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes lit the afternoon sky. I stayed away from the microphones. I hadn't come to become famous. I'd come to tell the truth. As I walked toward the parking lot, someone called my name. It was my father. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. He stopped a few feet away. I should have protected you. Those were the words I'd waited my whole childhood to hear. But something inside me had changed. I smiled politely. I know. He looked confused. I forgive you for saying it too late. Then I got into my car. A few months later, Dylan accepted a plea agreement for evidence tampering and reckless endangerment. He lost control of his company. Several major clients canceled their contracts. The warehouse employee made a full recovery and eventually found a safer job. As for me, I never went back to Ohio. Instead, I partnered with a nonprofit that teaches businesses how to respond to medical emergencies. Every training session ends the same way. An instructor places a rescue inhaler on a table. Then they say, if someone can't breathe, you don't ask questions. You don't play games. You hand it to them immediately. It takes less than 5 seconds. 5 seconds can save a life or reveal someone's character. People often ask whether I won. I don't think that's the right word. Winning would have meant getting my childhood back. That was never possible. What I found instead was peace. Because the truth doesn't always arrive quickly. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes decades. But when it finally catches up with the lie, it doesn't need to shout. It simply stands there, waiting.